Press Photographer's Tales, Part 1. If you're a working newspaper press photographer, you never really know what you're going to be doing from day to day. When you go into work in the morning, you could be doing anything from a golden wedding to a royal wedding. Literally, most of the time you never know what the day is actually going to entail. Some days you do have a bit of an idea because you'll have things in the diary, like on a Saturday maybe you might have a football match or two in the diary, or you could have a rugby match or something, or you'll have things like check presentation or the usual run-of-the-mill things that newspapers tend to put in. But obviously with a newspaper, news is the important part of it. So during the night there might have been a fire or a murder or an accident or something like that, so you would get sent out to deal with those things or to get pictures for those things, or even get called out sometimes in the middle of the night to go straight to the fire and so on. Well, one of the perils of being a press photographer is not knowing the details of what you're walking into, and that's where this story comes in. I go into work one morning, and in my diary, along with one or two other little notes, sort of normal jobs, is a note that says something like Mrs. Thomas, 24 Kilburn Road, or whatever it is. That's not the real address, but that's just a kind of a fake address. But it was something like that. No details about what the story is, no details about what it's about, nothing, not a clue. So I recognise the reporter's handwriting, so I go and try and find him. He's out on another job somewhere, and this is before the days of mobile phones, so you can't check anything. So off I go and do my one or two jobs first, and then I go over to Mrs. Thomas's house, knock the door, little old lady opens the door. Hello, she says. I say, hi, I'm Wayne, I'm the photographer. Oh, rightio, so she invites me in. Would you like a cup of tea and a bit of cake? Yes, fine. Never say no to a cup of tea and a bit of cake. So in I go. I try to find out what the story is about. So reporter's been speaking to you on the phone. I said, yes. She said, oh, he's a lovely man, and he's so and so. I said, yeah. So what is it what is it you do? And as I'm saying this, I'm looking around the living room of the house, and there are crochet doilies, crochet chair backs, crochet tablecloths, crochet cat, just about everything in the entire house is crochet work. Beautiful work. I mean, I'm no crochet expert, but it looks good to me. So she says, well, I do a lot of things, really. She said, I do a lot of crocheting and kind of waves to the house, I do a lot of crocheting. I've won an award for that. She said I won the Women's Weekly magazine or some other, whatever magazine it was, award for the crocheter of the year or whatever it is they do. I don't know how these things work. So, right, now we're getting somewhere. So this is what it's all about, right? So I have a nice cup of tea and a bit of cake, and then I get this dear little old lady posing with crocheting and pretending to crochet something and smoothing the crochet cat, just about everything. Back to the office at the end of the day, develop the films, do the prints, because in the newspapers I've worked in, we've always developed our own films and done our own printing. Black and white, all black and white, pretty much, apart from royal functions, which were usually in colour back then. So I do this, print up about 4 or 5 different poses of this little old lady. You caption the back of the prints with who it is, what it is. And the other thing you try and do with a newspaper is you always try and get various shots. You get some shots landscape format and some shots portrait format. And the idea of that is newspapers work in columns, so they can use a portrait format picture as a 1-column picture, or a landscape format picture as a 2-column picture, which gives them more options when they're setting up the page, basically. So you always try and get shots. You try and shoot one each way if you can, if the subject works for it. So I send these pictures off up to the, well, we didn't have a picture editor on that particular paper, we just had an editor, so I sent the pictures up to him, get on with my day. So the following day, I'm in my little office, and I get a phone call from the editor. Can you come up for a minute, Wayne? Yeah, sure, up I go. Now the editor was this particular editor was a really nice bloke. He'd started off as a press photographer, so he actually knew all the dodges. You couldn't kind of fool him with anything. He knew all the dodges, but he also knew the problems the press photographers have. So if you couldn't get a picture for some reason, you could understand why, because he'd been there and done it and got the t-shirt himself. So I go in, and he's got these pictures of this dear little old lady there, and he says, what the hell are these? I said, what do you mean, what are they? I said, they're Mrs. Thomas from so-and-so, so-and-so. No, he said, but what the hell what's she doing with all this knitting? I said, well, it's not knitting, it's crochet. They said, that's the story. She's won the People's Award for crochet, the People's Magazine or whatever it is, award. No, it's not. He said, don't you know what the story is? I said, well, no, as it happened, I still had the bit of paper that had been put in my diary. So I said, well, this is all I got from Richard, the reporter. So all it says on here is Mrs. Thomas and the address. I said, I had to find out from her. He said, oh, for God's sake. He said, do you know who she is? I said, well, no, obviously. So he said, well, she might look like a harmless little old lady to you and she's knitting crochet doilies, he said, but during the Second World War, she worked for the SOE, which was kind of the forerunner of MI5, basically, or MI6. And she was dropped into occupied France behind the German lines. And single-handedly, she killed half a dozen German and SS officers by garroting them and stabbing them in the throat with a commando knife. And you got this little old lady sitting there looking like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. So that's the lesson you learn, isn't it? When you go to a job, find out why you're there, because otherwise you can look a bit of a wally. Lesson learned there. Thank you for watching. Until next time.